name is Kylan Kester. I currently work for Google for Startups as a program coordinator. And in addition to that, I'm a growth and business design consultant. And I work with startups, nonprofits, Fortune 100 companies, and VCs to basically understand how they can bring programming that'll add value to their founder communities. Um, Done this work for a little bit over 4 or 5 years now. Been really excited about kind of the growth that I've had, and I wanted to share a little bit of my journey prior to where I currently am today, to hopefully give more context into how you all are able to find an alternative pathway to a career in technology as well. So without further ado, let's get started. Just to kind of give a little context, as you all kind of know, in this world that we've been seeing, one, people are looking for work. Unfortunately, there are large companies right now that have been, letting go folks, and there are also companies that are out there in a really large race right now to kind of find talent that is a good fit for their organization, both technical and non-technical talent. And in this conversation, I wanted to share a little bit of my journey and how I got involved, to hopefully give you all some tidbits or tips that'll help you all kind of navigate the journey as well. So my journey in tech actually started before I even came into working with the company I'm currently with. I actually started with Google for Startups earlier this year. But prior to that, I graduated from Morehouse College. I graduated class of 2019. And during my time in undergrad, I had a really incredible experience. One, I studied business administration. My concentration was in marketing. I also decided to take a minor, excuse me, in computer science when I started in my freshman year. I think at the time, around like 2015, it was the time that I started school. And at that time, technology careers were very highly sought after. However, those skills and that skill set was also something that a lot of people were trying to find the best way to build. So I thought that a computer science minor would help. And I was in a very kind of privileged position, if you will, going to Morehouse, because we also had some really great folks who were there to teach us the computer science degree. Had a program that Google actually sponsored that brought in folks who were actually software engineers at Google at the time to come and be our professors and teach us about technology. And it was in that first year that I was at Morehouse and starting to take that class that I started to look around and see in the room that there were people who really knew the software engineering skill sets that they wanted to build. They were really passionate about it and were able to kind of just jump right in. And I found myself in a position of not really being as interested or passionate about the software engineering side. And so kind of more immediately in my freshman year, I decided maybe computer science isn't the right fit for me. And so I kind of doubled down on my marketing degree and wanted to find ways to be able to bring that into a career in technology. So one of my first tips that I'll provide, and hopefully that'll be able to add value to this conversation here, is build your network. One of the first things that I did was I looked for different roles at companies that I wanted to work for. My top of my list was Apple. And I was looking at what type of opportunities that they had that weren't technical. And as I was looking at those different opportunities, I actually came across a very interesting scholarship that they had in partnership with the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, the Apple HBCU scholarship. And one of the roles that I was actually very interested in, which was in marketing and communications, they were actually recruiting for that role through the scholarship. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was reach out to folks within my network. And that included alumni from Morehouse College that currently worked at Apple or worked at Apple at the time that I was looking out for the role. And I was able to connect with someone who was already at Apple and had some really great experiences. And they were also able to provide me a recommendation to the program. And so that was kind of my first in. And I think that that was a really great catalytic experience for me in terms of just growing into technology. So one, getting that network built out is one thing, but then also identifying the right opportunities for you to get your entry point. And so I came in from the scholarship and also was able to like find a way to be able to bring the skill sets that I've already had in marketing, either from working with different folks to help them connect with students on campus. I also was a writer in my past life. And so being able to bring some of those experiences into the role, that really showed me that there is actual space for me here in the tech ecosystem. And it didn't have to be a computer science degree. And as I was also kind of doing my things outside of internship that I was doing that summer, I ended up finding a really great community in the Silicon Valley Bay Area. I'm not sure if any of you all have been there or are familiar with the space, but they have events there. The event is called Toasted Life. And every first Friday, it was like pretty well known that people would come and go and celebrate the end of the week. And it was a really interesting experience because it exposed me to a really diverse community of folks who were also working in technology and also across different skill sets, whether it be tech or non-technical. And that was such an important experience for me. I think because one, I got to see myself in a lot of the folks who were working at these companies and saw like kind of where my future would ultimately be. But in addition to that, it also showed me that there's a community out here that's surrounded around technology, entrepreneurship, innovation. And it was all kind of centered in the Oakland area of the Bay Area. And so I was I finished my internship at the end of that summer and came back to Atlanta. That's where I'm based here now. And when I actually came back to Atlanta, one of the first things that I wanted to do was see how that community showed up here. I know that we have a number of different Fortune 500 companies here, technology-driven companies here, startups that are here as well. And I didn't quite find that there was a community that was already established at the time that was focused on bringing all of these different places and people together. And so I ended up like looking out into the community and finding a really cool and interesting nonprofit while I was in my senior year. And it's called Startup Atlanta. And so this is going to probably be my third tip, which is really kind of like finding or creating the opportunities that you're looking for. And so when I reached out to the nonprofit Startup Atlanta, I shared with them one of the things that I want to do is work more closely in the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem. And one of the board members at the time, they were like, oh, well, there's actually this really interesting role as a community coordinator where you can come in and become what they call an ecosystem builder. For those who don't know what an ecosystem builder is, when I refer to ecosystem, I mean it is comprised of all of the different components from the community, basically founders, funders, community program operators, folks who are just looking to support startups and bringing all of those different communities together in one space that work together. And so when I got the opportunity to work for the nonprofit Startup Atlanta, it was an incredible experience to actually do just that and bringing all of these different communities together, but then also start to go through other skill sets that were very important in the technology experience that I've had as well, including things like event production and event management, community management, some other skill sets that I picked up, project management, program management, working with a number of different programs and coming in with ideas on different things to show up for founders. And I was still in my senior year in undergrad. So I was still also just trying to figure out what my next big step would be after my internship at Apple. And in that time, I ended up picking up these other really great transferable skills that ended up positioning me really well to continue to lead in the organization. And I've worked for the nonprofit for about 3 to 4 years. And in the time, I've been able to build an incredible network as I kind of bring back my first point there, of people who were just that founders, funders, ecosystem builders, community builders. And that also kind of created other opportunities for me down the line. After I graduated from Morehouse, I still wanted to find a full-time job at a corporation. And so I ended up putting out some feelers. I was being recruited from everywhere from Apple to Microsoft. But I ended up taking on a role that I was recruited for at Accenture, because I thought that that would also continue to build skill sets, both in the technology space, but places, transferable skills that I would be able to take places outside of the technology space as well. So I spent about 3 years after I graduated from Morehouse in management consulting. And that was kind of like the cherry on top experience, I'd say, on top of the event management, event production experience, and a number of the other different experiences that I came in with. And I love that because it also introduced me to other ways to be able to bring in consulting into the work that I do as well. And so did Accenture for 3 years, primarily focused in growth and business design. And what that primarily meant was helping nonprofits and organizations like large companies build operating models, defining how they were going to basically run their businesses, who was going to help them run their businesses, and the platforms that they wanted to run those businesses on. And that was some really great experience. I got to support some really great projects, both pro bono through Accenture, but then also through our large contracts that the company has as well. And so through that experience, I was able to bring together my event management production experience because I still worked at Startup Atlanta while I was at Accenture. And it was really great to be able to kind of come into the community with both of those skill sets and networks as well. And so coming out of that experience, one of the next things that I really discovered was that I really want to focus in the entrepreneurship and innovation space. And in order to do that, I wanted to kind of bring my skill sets together and find an organization or company that was primarily and solely focused on that. And one of the things that I had to do as a result was volunteer for some organizations prior to even working. And so an example of that would be like Google for Startups, for example. Prior to me working there currently, I did a few different volunteer experiences with them, helping them produce different events, helping them identify speakers for events, also attending events and helping kind of manage some of the energy while I was there. And I was able to build a really incredible network during that time prior to me even joining the team. Following that, one of the things that I ended up being able to do was also host different events that were kind of integral to the startup Atlanta community. And so that included everywhere from our Atlanta Startup Week, also helped host our Atlanta Startup Awards as well. And I also went back to my previous experience as a writer and started to publish what we call our Atlanta founder stories, which were recaps and deeper dives into the stories of some of the founders that were represented in the community. And so I was super excited and incredibly, like, I'd say, ambitious is the word, about the way that I wanted to approach entering, a large corporation that did focus primarily on startups. But the network, once again, is what really got me into the entry point there. One of our board members at Startup Atlanta, Joey Womack, which you all might know, but if you don't know, you should know him. He introduced me to this wonderful and incredible opportunity. And with all of the experiences that I was able to share, that I just shared with you all, they thought I was be a really great fit for the program. And I've been there for about 3 years now. Oh, not 3 years, 3 months, excuse me. It feels like 3 years. But I've been there for about 3 months now. And in the process, it's been really great just to see how we've been able to show up for our founders through the Black Founders Fund at Google, as well as the Latino Founders Fund at Google. And so with that, I am super excited about some of the program experiences that I've had. I want to also take time to address some of the questions that I see that are populating in the chat. So I'll take a quick pause there. And as you all have questions, I invite and encourage you all to drop them either in the Q&A or in the chat as well. So I'll just kind of jump in on the first one that I see here. How did I find out get into volunteering with Google for Startups? So that was primarily through the work that I did with Startup Atlanta. The nonprofit, it brings together all of these different organizations. And like I said, I kind of volunteered first. And so if there were opportunities to either provide value through the work that I was doing at Startup Atlanta, then reaching out to me for folks who were in my network to see if there would be good speakers, being a speaker myself in certain events, making sure like the subject matter expertise was there. That was another way that I got involved. And then also just kind of like getting to know the founder community prior to even being a part of the company through the Atlanta founder stories that I was writing. So that was kind of the entry point, and I think what really got me involved with the program at Google. I see here that there's another question from Jasmine saying, do you have any advice for networking with others while residing in a not so popular tech communication friendly city? That is a great question. And one of the things I'll say is like I said, I think earlier, is like, you create the opportunities that you want to see. And a lot of the time, some of the cities that might not be like an Atlanta or might not be like a San Francisco or Oakland, they are places where their opportunity, there are entrepreneurs in all of these different, every city you can think of. There are technology companies in practically every major city that you can think of. There are also nonprofit organizations and other places that also support these companies in this ecosystem. And so finding kind of where you can add your skill set into one of those places, I think is one of the great entry points and advice that I'd have there. One of the other things that I'd say too is find ways to host and create events and spaces where you can convene these networks when there aren't opportunities like that. For example, we didn't have Atlanta Startup Week for a few years by the time that I ended up hosting it in 2020. And that was a pretty open process. Techstars is the organization that runs the Atlanta Startup Week program, if you will. And they have an open application for you to host Atlanta Startup Week in your city. And so that's another thing that I'd share is just like look into Techstars, their startup week. They also have startup weekends. They allow for people to submit to become an organizer for the event. And generally, all you need is just an idea of like who's going to help you organize the event, identifying maybe 5 to 6 volunteers to help you execute on the event, and then also identifying potential sponsors and people who want to back creating this type of community in your ecosystem. And so hosting an event like that is one way. Another way to consider is also storytelling, whether it be, I publish most of the articles that I wrote about founders through a platform called Medium. And it's an open source platform where anyone can go in and really drop in articles and things that are thought leadership to them. And so, you don't really need permission to go and like meet founders that you hear that have interesting stories. And so another way I'd say, to kind of break into the tech communication space is just to start going out and reaching out to folks and helping them tell their story. Because a lot of the times, a lot of these folks are looking for a platform to share where they've been and what they're doing. And if you have the skill sets in marketing and communications to help them tell that story, that'll go an incredibly far way for a lot of these people. Let's see, Shantae also has a question. It says, it's been extremely challenging trying to network through LinkedIn. They've been liking, commenting posts, and also sending private messages without being too intrusive and haven't received much responses. What are some suggestions? That's a really great question. And, I'll also say, even with like 12,000 followers, which I don't even think is a lot, but like even with that many, I have a hard time of reaching out to people and getting the type of engagement that I want. There's a few different approaches you can take there. If there's a specific company or a specific person or type of role that you're trying to either learn more about or get connected to, a lot of the times, if you're not getting the person that you're trying to reach out to a response from them, you might be talking to the wrong person, or give it to charge it to they might be busy they might be in a busy period or a busy season for them, and so giving them some kind of tenacious consistency goes a long way. I think one of the other things to kind of be mindful of during the process is to kind of not sound like a sales pitch. A lot of the times, it goes a long way just to, spark an introduction with, hey, I see what you're doing. I think it's really interesting work. I'd love to do an introduction call and just do a one-on-one to learn more about you, and see if there are any ways that we might partner or collaborate with each other. Sometimes you don't need to add context. Sometimes it helps to add context. So it's not a one size fits all response. But there's definitely creative ways to approach getting in front of people and making sure that they're the right people that you should be talking to. Thank you for that question, Shantae. I see Chisholm's currently based in Atlanta and would love to get involved in Startup Atlanta community as they navigate pivoting in the tech and public health space. Definitely encourage and invite anyone who's interested to get involved. I'll drop the website for Startup Atlanta in the chat. One of the really great initiatives that we're going to be focused on over the next year is going to be a community calendar where we'll have all of the different events and things to get involved with in the Atlanta startup community. And so that's going to be coming very soon in 2023. And as we kind of launch that, that'll be another great way for you to find ways to get involved and plug in. But for the time being, one of the calendars that I keep very close to me and want to always know about, if I ever want to know about different events that are happening in the community, is a news platform called Hypopotamus. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but I'll also drop that here as well. They have a current calendar, but it's something that will be able to kind of share at least what we're doing so far. And hopefully we get to get an opportunity to connect through your involvement with Startup Atlanta if you decide so. Awesome. Oh, and also in the chat here, I just dropped the Atlanta Startup Ecosystem Guide. Oops, is that right? Oh, guide.startupatlanta.com. Excuse me. Drop it again. And another kind of really great resource that we create at the nonprofit is this guide. And it's basically a one-stop shop resource that aggregates all of the different organizations that are in our community across different categories like media and news, places that you can go to work, corporate innovation centers where there are large corporations that invest in innovation and entrepreneurship, programs for education and building your skill sets. Another tip that I would provide is building something like this in your community if it doesn't currently exist. One, it creates an opportunity for you to become a thought leader in the space if you publish it before other folks do. But then also it creates a really great resource for other folks, not even just founders, but also funders and people who are looking for ways to break into the community if they're not already there. So to the question earlier about how they can kind of get started in this space without having like any kind of entrepreneurial ecosystem already established, building a guide for your ecosystem is a really great way to start. And this can happen in a number of different ways. One way I've seen it done is through an article. So I mentioned Medium before. Some folks have just figured out what categories that they want to focus on, and they've just published the names of different companies or organizations that support entrepreneurs. And they've gone through and actually just wrote an article with like maybe one line of a sentence about what the organization does and a link to their website. This other platform that I've shared is built, I believe, on WordPress, and it's built through a design company that sponsored us. So if you're able to find, something to that effect, or if you even have those skill sets, definitely leverage those to be able to build a resource that'll ultimately help you become a thought leader, but also help others in their process of becoming an entrepreneur. I'm still monitoring the chat for any questions or just kind of general comments. So I really appreciate all of the engagement that you all have had so far. One of the other things that I wanted to share was just, it's not just innovation and entrepreneurship that you could do if you're looking for a career in tech. There are jobs like project management, program management that you can also break into. And I've had experiences in both. And one of the things I'll say is skill sets are also one of the big things that a lot of these companies are emphasizing when looking for these roles. And the best way to make yourself stand out in a skill set, excuse me, is through certifications. So, I'm pretty sure, for those of you who might be already looking, you might already be on a kind of pathway of looking for the right certification to break into your industry. But one of the really great resources, and I'm not just biased because I work for the company now, but Grow with Google has been an incredible resource that provides really great certification and training in skill sets that are both technical and non-technical, that allow for you to be able to actually get certified and also have something that you can add in your resume or anywhere you're adding your credentials to be able to actually stand out amongst other applicants. So that's another area that I'd love to, share with you that you can focus on in terms of like skill sets. And it's not a one-stop shop thing. I've come to find that there's skill sets that I've built 2-3 years ago, and I've still take trainings this year and learn new things. And so like constantly growing your knowledge base and constantly continuing your education is definitely something I would advise to folks who are interested. There are other certifications that aren't just Google based that you can check into as well, such as like project management, um, the normal PMP, I think it's called, a certification, which a lot of folks do. SAFE is another one, and it's a agile project management kind of certification that you can also get as well. A lot of product managers use that, and there are folks who I've met that are non-technical, didn't do software engineering or computer science in their degree, but went along and had some type of business degree or any other degree, liberal arts I've even seen. But they've gone and gotten this SAFE certification, and they've been able to go on and actually still get product management jobs, even though they don't have that technical experience. So that's another certification that I would definitely look out for. I'm just checking in on the chat, make sure I don't have any questions that I'm missing here. I'd love to kind of, open it up if anyone is comfortable to join on camera, come off mute. Would love to kind of take any questions or hear anyone else's journey that is in a career right now in the technology space, but not necessarily in a technical role. Any takers? Akila, you don't have to come on camera if you're not camera ready, but I appreciate the effort. It says I see you said you just joined. I don't see your name at the bottom here though. There we go.
Hi.
Yeah. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for the invite. How is everyone doing?
I'm refusing to complain here. It's a sunny day in Atlanta finally. It's been rainy all week.
I know that's right. It's been rainy here in Chicago, but I appreciate it because that means I am enjoying good sleep,
Yeah.
and I definitely need that. So, my whole career for the most part has been in tech, but not necessarily like technical in the way people would think. So, like software engineering or software development or things like that. I got started through contracting, and I was a risk assessor. And nowadays things are different. So in the business, like back in the glory days, like early to mid 2000s and even before, like it was easy to push projects out the door and make any edits and changes that you wanted because there were no checks and balances.
Yeah.
And then the government's like, yeah, we don't like that because people were committing a lot of fraud and
Oh,
things
no.
were being caught. So one of the assignments I was on was at a bank, and it was in the I forgot the name of the department, but that's what we were doing. Like we were monitoring access, teaching people about why these changes were happening. It's not us, it's the government. Don't yell at me, take it up with the feds. And that's how I got my start. And it's been really interesting because, like, during this time, I meet a lot of people that are like, how do I get in tech? The opportunities are there.
Yeah.
It may not be there in the way that you're used to. And this really worked out for me because I ended up going back to school, getting a master's degree that complemented the work that I was doing and I'm still doing now, just in a different company and a different title, but it's still GRC related, right? So now I'm a project coordinator. I'm working on a regulatory engagement as a project coordinator. But those skills that I learned early on, like how to engage with leadership, how to communicate with different teams, even things that I learned in school because I was a philosophy major
Oh,
and I'm
nice.
in IT. And so you read all of this like long, difficult text that hurts your brain, but then you have to write like a 2 paragraph or a 2 page paper on it, right? You have to succinctly explain that. So when people are like, you did this and you're here, I'm like, yeah, it fits, right? Every business has a code of ethics. Somebody wrote that, but you take these complex things and you have to simplify them. So I think that people are more technical than they realize.
Yeah.
They just don't know how to think about how to apply the skills that they have to the roles that they want in a way that also makes sense, right? So, like, if you find yourself in a GRC space like me or around cybersecurity, maybe focus in and target those opportunities, especially if they tend to follow you, and that way you can really narrow your focus. I think it can be overwhelming to want to do all of the things and
Yeah.
chase after all of the things, but I don't want to code. I
Yeah.
don't want to see an Excel sheet. I have to see them. I don't want to do a sequel. And I know that about myself. And it allows me to be freer and a lot more honest in interviews. Whereas some people are like, just lie and say you can do it. Do not lie and say you can do it.
Yeah.
If you can do it. And if you don't want to do it, because you're going to be called to do it. And then the money won't be enough. So that's how I got in. I've been doing different things. I've been a business analyst
Nice.
on a governmental engagement for a client. Yeah, I just jump, I switch, I make decisions. I want to do something different. And then I target those roles and I don't interview for nothing else outside of those roles. And also, joining organizations can help. I'm a member of the Junior League here in
Nice.
Chicago. And when I joined, I didn't even have a job. And I met with the president, and she's like, I'm going to link you in our LinkedIn group where people post opportunities. I would go to the meetings, and some of the new meeting facilitators were like, don't be shy. Tell people you're looking for work.
Yeah.
And, eventually my opportunity came. It didn't come that way, but you just never know who you're going to meet, who you're going to cross paths with. So just be out there and be kind to people because you never know when you're going to cross paths again. So with the company I work for, and we're also hiring, we need a junior BA, we need a compliance product owner, we need a data analyst. So send me a LinkedIn. I can send you the role,
Job opportunities.
job opportunities, and the director is actively hiring. We need people. We are short staffed. The consultants roll off tomorrow, and we need people to come in and help us work. So please reach out to me.
I love
But
that. If you don't mind sharing your LinkedIn in the chat, so
oh,
we
absolutely.
be able to engage you. That's a great lead to another opportunity. And I also really appreciate that additional context you provided there. I think it really drives home the kind of first point that I was trying to make around networking and making sure that you all are building a network that is prior to you even like maybe even looking for a job. Sometimes you want to be able to have like a group that you're able to either go to help find a job or not just that. Sometimes you might want just support with certain things that you're doing. I love that there was someone who reached out to me recently that saw I was a program coordinator, and they're also in the project and program coordination space as well. And they just wanted a community of other people to share best practices. So you never know how that networking can lead to other opportunities or a community that you can lean on in the process.
Or even things you need, right? So I'm new to project management. Oh, that's what I was remembering my thought. Be kind to people. There is a senior project manager here, but when I met him, he was a recruiter. And
Nice.
we worked together in the past. He didn't place me anywhere, but we remember each other. So now when I need access to things or where can I find this or that, he's helping me. And then there was another seasoned project manager. She would be like director level, who I worked with at my former contract. She's here now also. So I reached out to her about a role, and she replied back to me on our company
Love
email address. And she's also been helping me. So with the PMs, like all those templates or things that your company may not need, that you may need help drafting, that's what the network is for.
Yeah.
You can't think of all the things when you're new, but people who have this experience will be willing to help you. So put yourself out there. I know it's not easy, it's challenging, it's uncomfortable, but it will really serve you because you don't go at it alone.
Absolutely. I love the context that you also added around just like your earlier part of your career and the skill sets that you were able to bring to the current career that you have now. I think that brings in another really great tip and point is, one, you're in charge of your career. And so, definitely making sure that you own that. And if you're looking for an opportunity or you're looking for the next big opportunity, that you really take that by the reins and you kind of define how that looks for you and also how you kind of prepare yourself for that process. And the second part to that tip is, you don't necessarily need anyone's permission to, kind of grow and kind of continue to do other things for your career. And so with that, make sure that you take advantage of different opportunities. And Akila, I'm curious to know, like, what type of skill sets did you build or kind of like grow on? I know you kind of went on your master's, and so that's really great to hear that that's one way that you did it. But can you share a little bit more of how you kind of prepare yourself for your current role?
Yeah, so in the master's, actually the master's program was really good because those skill sets helped me um, going forward. So like I eventually ended up working as an IT auditor, but I learned about that in the master's program. But one of the ways that helped me uh, engaging with leadership wasn't with the first contract, but it was when I was in the auditor position. And one of the first assignments I had, I was talking to a VP of technology, and my manager was there, but I thought he was going to give more support. And he was, took a very hands back approach and basically let this VP talk to me however he wanted. And then in the meeting, I'm like, wait a minute, but what is this? And so that taught me very quickly, although you may be junior in your career, it doesn't mean you don't have authority. So I learned a lot just kind of like being hands on. But one of the things I'm doing now is the Google project management course.
Nice.
So I can upskill myself and then eventually take like the PM exam or the CAPM. So doing things like that. I also want to do it for data analytics, but I'm not going to advertise that because that's just more of a me thing.
Yeah.
But things like that, joining the junior league, being asked to present, and then following the prompts for that, practicing the presentation, which is public speaking. I took a public speaking course in school, so those like learning about active listening, taking some of those free company trainings that your company has, like mindfulness and all these things, how to navigate OneNote and like you were talking about earlier, you may know how to use Excel or PowerPoint, but it's so much you can do in those tools. You think you know how to do a PowerPoint. You take a PowerPoint course and you'd be like, I don't know what I was doing before, but like it's levels to this.
Yeah.
So just all those opportunities to upskill myself. I used to work for Ernst and Young, and they had like you could do like a free membership to Udemy. You
Nice.
better believe I was taking courses. So if you are employed or when you become, utilize the resources available to you. If your team member does something cool while they share their screen, say, hey, can you teach me that?
Yeah.
Grab at every opportunity.
That's
And
incredible.
yeah, skills pay the bills. So
Yeah, that's right.
the more you have, the better ones you can get. You're just enhancing yourself. So I know networking is difficult. I be scared sometimes. I know y'all be feeling scared, but just do it. You never know. You just never know. And I live by that. I try to live by that.
I love that. That's a quotable. I'm definitely gonna have to make sure I drop that quote. The skills pay the bills. I think that's so incredible, and I love that. To that point, and even like bringing back the kind of first point that I had around me coming in and starting undergrad and wanting to study computer science and understanding and learning that that's not my strength and that's not where my passion lies. A lot of the time, and a lot of folks who've asked me just general career advice, what I've seen are there are gaps that people have in their skills. And a lot of folks that I've met are trying to find ways to address those gaps. But I kind of challenge folks to always think about it differently, and rather than focus on the things that you're not good at and the gaps that you have in certain skills, lean into your strength areas, lean into the things that you know that you can see yourself doing on a day-to-day basis, because ultimately your job is where you're going to be spending most of your time. And why go through all the process of learning a skill set if you're going to find yourself personally, and no shade to any of the software engineers in the room, but personally, like one of the big turnoffs for me of becoming a software engineer was like watching all the YouTube videos of a day in the life of a software engineer, and hearing people, just talk about them not wanting to stay in that career long because they don't see themselves sitting in front of a computer and coding all day. And so, kind of leaning into the things that you find yourself truly passionate about, I found has helped me a lot in my career. I've ended up finding that I love helping give first before even asking for things. And so working in community is something that I'd love to do. And then also the entrepreneurship and innovation space. I find myself as a very creative person, but with a business spin, if you will. And I find that working in the entrepreneurship and innovation space, you're able to apply a lot of the creativity that you might naturally have in helping solve a lot of these really pertinent business problems. So I really love that you're talking about like the skills that you want to build, but then also kind of leaning into the skills that you're aligned with and the ones that really bring you to a path that you can ultimately be happy in.
Absolutely. And even for those who are like drafting resumes, and this is something that I had to learn. If it's not something you want to do, stop listing it.
Yeah.
You don't have to put everything you know how to do on the resume. Put the things you like to do, put the things you want to do, but don't everything. No, not that.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know about everything. Um, and also, like if you go back and look at some of your transcripts from when you were in school, see which classes you did well in.
Yeah.
It'll probably help you also. Like if you were struggling in coding and SQL wasn't it, maybe that's not the path for you, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. I love that. And, kind of to your point around like skills pay the bills, some of the hot skills that I found that are, really starting to become a necessity for a lot of the large companies out here, are things like project management, to your point, things like cybersecurity. There's also a very huge growing need for that creativity and innovation space, strategy. There are other skill sets like I'm trying to think of all of them. Event management, event production, of course, those are also very huge skill sets. Storytelling, being able to kind of take a lot of information and turn it into a story that most people can either understand or be able to repeat. Are there any other skills, Akila, that you can think of that, are outside of the ones that I brought?
Oh, data analyst.
Yes, yes, of course. And that data is huge right now.
And data is just information, so it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be an Excel wizard or anything like that. But if you have a strength with taking very complex information and synthesizing it and making it um, digestible, that is a huge skill set. If you are effective, excuse me, at giving presentations or leading teams, if you can be the one that, uh, manages programs or just projects, and these are things that you can do in any industry.
Yeah. In every industry uses data. It's crazy to see now, like, how many jobs in the data and analytics space are growing. And a lot of the times it's what sets you apart from other candidates if you have that experience being able to either manipulate, manage, or even collect data. And collecting data is, I think consider it the easy part, whether it be from primary research and going out and talking to people and capturing the information, or secondary research and going out and finding things online or doing your own market research. And so there's always a different entry point and ways that you can grow this skill set to be able to add value to an organization. But it's always just about first identifying if that's what you want to do, and then second, getting started.
And being honest, like if you know you're really not trying to be doing all the things to make money, which really the money won't be enough and you'll just be stressed.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being truthful about that with yourself and saying, you know what? I want to work in an environment where I can manage it and myself effectively. I need to pivot my thinking. And then from there I can pivot the action. But if you just like spraying and praying like what people do and applying to a whole bunch of things, you're gonna wear yourself out. I have done it. I have tried it. It doesn't work.
I love that. Yeah. And it also impacts your overall experience too. There's been times where, I've been on the job hunt and, having an interview back to back to back can wear on you. And by the time you get to the third interview, if it's in that day or even in that week, sometimes you just don't show up the same as you would have for that first one. And so definitely having a strategic and targeted approach there is incredibly important. Another thing I'll add too, and as we're getting wrapped up here, because I see we're at the 2-minute mark, is negotiate your skills and the talent that you have. Don't go in with the first offer that they give you, even if it's something that you consider yourself either entry level for, or something that you might not deem that you have the right or appropriate experience in. You'd be surprised if you dig deep into a job description, or as you talk to recruiters and just get an opportunity to ask them questions, you'd be surprised how many of the transferable skills that you have will add value to that role and also make you a more competitive candidate in the process of negotiating what a salary looks like or what other benefits might look like for you as well. Awesome. Just checking the chat to see if there are any more questions. I don't see any, but as we get wrapped up, I want to first thank you, Akila, for joining and sharing your journey. It's been really incredible to hear. I'm glad that we're connected. I look forward to us getting in touch.
Thank you.
And then also thank you all for joining this wonderful session in Techsgiving Summit. In the process, I hope you all continue to learn really great and exciting things, get to meet and network with really great and exciting people.